I say it's unorganized because I think 80% of furniture that's sold across India happens without an invoice, right? It's general cash transactions where, you have your regular carpenters, people getting it done. You go to many of the apartments, you'll find a whole lot of carpenters doing work out there.
Your design process starts with hand drawings, and how does it translate into the digital medium?
I feel the pace of thinking and the pace of what comes out on paper has to match. And that happens with hand drawing. But after that, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to romanticize this idea of drawing.
You've bought a lot of products from us,
yes.
But you've never dealt with me.
Yes, I've met you much later.
Yeah, much later. So the idea is you need to replicate yourself, right. And you need to have trust in the person who's handling it. Without that trust, it doesn't work. And we only step in if we need to step in. If I'm micromanaging it doesn't work.
Okay.
Like there is a saying in our line which is saying, are you a owner or are you an operator? And if you're an operator, you cannot scale.
And Art Village was one of those pro bonos, which had limited resources, and it was all crowd funded, as they say nowadays. And the doors and windows that I was getting to, which are the most expensive, they just wanted to leave it as openings and put a mesh, this chicken mesh that you get.
Right.
So they thought they would just do that and leave it. But I was unable to sleep that night thinking that it doesn't have to look low cost if it is low cost. We are only looking towards the West, and the prize speaker will be somebody who comes from the West. Why we have architects here in India? Why are there no magazines and talks given by architects from extremely talented architects that you find in Vietnam and Cambodia? In their contexts, their cultures are relevant to us. So why don't we look at these architects? And I feel that's what we need to promote.
Hello friends and fellow professionals, welcome to yet another episode of Institute of Indian Interior Designers podcast series, Design Dialogues. It is my pleasure once again to welcome you on behalf of the Bangalore regional chapter. This episode number 5 is about craftsmanship and scale. If you are one grappling with this question, craftsmanship or scale, detailing or expansion, this episode is for you. We have two very eminent guests today with us. I'll shortly introduce you to them. If you have been watching our episodes all along, our gratitude. If you have not watched our previous episodes, my urge is to go back, visit them at your leisure. Do remember to make comments and suggestions so that we can make these episodes richer and better for you. Suggest who would you like us to interview next? What kind of questions are more pertinent to your need? Comment below so that we get to know. Getting on with episode number 5. Today we have with us a senior architect Aparna Narasimhan. Welcome, Aparna.
Hi.
And industry leader in furniture retail, Amruth Sampige. Welcome, Amruth.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you.
So let me take our viewers through a short introduction which I need to read out. Architect Aparna Narasimhan is partner and design director at Venkataramanan Associates. Venkataramanan Associates is a name that is familiar to all of us, a 56-year plus growing practice. One of India's most established architectural practices. With over 32 years of experience, she guides the firm's design process and critical review sessions with a strong emphasis on structure, integrity, and contextual clarity. Her work spans residential, institutional, and other typologies of projects marked by the rare ability to move seamlessly from master plan level thinking to minute detailing. A keen artist and advocate of drawing by hand, Aparna believes in architecture rooted in Indian culture, heritage, and craft. Beyond practice, she co-founded Kadambari, which we'll talk more about, to promote the performing and fine arts of India. She remains deeply engaged with students, sustaining a thoughtful dialogue between design, art, and mentorship. Now about Amruth Sampige. Amruth Sampige is a first-generation entrepreneur and co-founder of Dash Square, a premium furniture retail platform that brings global design brands into the Indian market. But beyond retail, Amruth thinks in systems. Deeply influenced by structured execution models and performance metrics, he approaches furniture not merely as a product, but as an organized retail ecosystem in a largely unorganized sector like the furniture industry. He sees Dash Square not just as a chain of stores, but as a scalable platform built on discipline, storytelling, and long-term impact, with a belief that scale only matters if it uplifts the people building it. So, welcome once again, and we will begin our conversation with architect Aparna. This is what we normally do, Aparna. We would like to know your professional journey from the time you chose to be an architect, when you decided that, okay, this would be my career, to your educational days, and then early days, growing up to this level where you are at the moment. Share us what defines your journey, any mentors, any defining moments, anything interesting our viewers would love to know.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Satish,
Welcome.
and IIID for taking the trouble to call me and have me talk to everybody. Yeah, so my journey began by just drawing, because as a child, of course, I was very interested in drawing, and I used to draw anything that I saw. And it was all encouraged by my mother, who was a very creative person, but not in the conventional sense. She was a very good seamstress, and also used to paint and do the things that women of a certain background do at that time, and she was a musician, etc. But whatever I would draw, whether it was good or bad, she always encouraged it. And I grew up thinking I could draw because of her, but I wasn't sure whether I was good, but I thought I was. And yes, that's how my journey began in this creative field. And then I had people in my family, especially my cousin, who was also an architect, um, who stayed in a city she stayed in Delhi, and we stayed in a hill town called Kasauli, very close to Delhi. And they used to visit us quite often, my cousin and her family. And she was at that time pursuing architecture, and she used to draw whatever she saw, and all the buildings around us. And it was a quaint old sort of a British town. So so that's when I realized that there is everything is beautiful, everything can be art. And she was the one who told me, just draw whatever you see, don't worry about whether it's good or bad. And that's how I got interested in architecture. And then,
Wonderful.
of course, in school, when everybody, there's a stream that you decide, science or commerce, or in school itself, you got to decide in the 11th or 12th. And that's when I thought that although I'm interested in art, I was not sure whether I wanted it as a profession, as an artist. I didn't think I was that either good at it, or I didn't think it as a viable profession for me. But I also liked physics. I wasn't very keen in maths, but whatever I had learned of physics, I liked. And the rest of the family were all engineers and all of that. So it was not cool to do anything but either engineering or anything close to that. And therefore, architecture was a good marriage of both science and art.
Right.
And I had this exposure to drawing and all of that. And that's how I got into architecture.
Okay. And you studied at MIT Manipal.
Yes, we were in Delhi when I graduated from my 12th. But after that, we had to move down south, and my parents were in Manipal, offered an architecture course, fortunately. Otherwise, I would have had to move to some other part of India. I thought I would apply for they had a entrance exam and all of that. And that's how I got into architecture in Manipal. And it was also growing sort of a subject then in Manipal, in the college, because it was primarily an engineering college, and Manipal also had medicine. KMC was a prominent medical college there. And architecture had just started a couple of years ago, and they were very open to this new profession to teach students, and so they got faculty from all over who were very proficient, and some of them were very young. So we had a very good mix of faculty, and who thought differently, and who were completely, opposite to what a typical square engineering college would be. Suddenly there were these 5 or 6 faculty members who were completely different, and came from a sort of a creative background, and unconventional. And so we had the best of both worlds. We had a very pragmatic, solid engineering college background. At the same time, there was this very creative and forward thinking sort of faculty. And even our arts faculty, for drawing, we had excellent artists who used to come and teach us. And so for
Wonderful.
me, it was a complete experience, and it was so rooted in a culture of the coastal Karnataka, South India. And for me, it was different. I had grown up all the time in the north. I had never actually, although I'm a South Indian, I never lived in the south. And so this was so rooted for me. And there were most of my classmates were from either locals from Dakshina Kannada, or they were from Kerala, which has such a strong vernacular sort of style, Kerala, till
Influence.
today. So for us, it was a great chance to understand our own architecture, and to begin that way. And that was our alphabet. And from there, it was always easy to expand.
So you have practiced architecture for over 30 years now, and is there one strong foundational principle that has been with you since then till now, for 32 years or so that you have been into the profession?
Things change over time. I wouldn't say I have the same thing all throughout. That means I wouldn't be growing. But if I had to really, really step back, I would say at present, it is that get a robust design program, understand it completely, and then be true to that. Make sure your design program covers everything: the context, what exactly is required by the client, how it will be maintained, what is the connectivity, and all the things that we learn in architecture.
Adjacencies and
But
stuff.
what the client needs also, and what is your own hidden agenda? How do you want it to look, and which you want
Right.
the client to like? You don't want to force it down the client. So this kind of a design program has to be really robust. So nobody should be able to poke holes on it later, and you yourself shouldn't be disappointed with your final.
Wonderful. That's nice to hear. You guide your design reviews in a large firm like VA, and it's a multidisciplinary sort of large practice. And obviously, there are a variety of projects. How do you structure a design process so that it remains, alive through the course of the project, which could be very long periods of time?
See, the kind of projects that any firm does, and especially the scale that we handle in our practice, are so huge that it is not the architect is just one cog in the wheel. There's so many other important forces which drive a project. You have the engineers, which is the structural engineer, you have the MEP, and then you have the client and client's own team of people, their financial team, their budget controls. Then you have statutory requirements and all of that. So, and what the client wants to project, and all of that. So you have so many teams working. So you have to know the architect sort of is the orchestrator, and
True.
he puts in all these inputs and makes a cohesive sort of an idea for what needs to be built. And through constant design reviews throughout the life cycle of a project, we make sure that this constant design reviews are structured, and therefore the design intent is maintained throughout the life cycle of the project, as well as across all these disciplines of different people who work on the project. So they also buy into that same design idea. Try not to own it, so that then everybody
That's
feels
wonderful.
they are included in the whole process.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's also, I really appreciate the humility with which you said architect is just a cog in the wheel, which obviously we would love to kind of call ourselves the design mastermind. But yes, I think that's
You're
the
right.
reality.
You know, the thing is, as students of architecture and the faculty too, you know, you've gone through the whole sort of process of, you know, education. It's always, they sort of inflate the ego of the designer and, you know, the idea of an architect, and how the creative process is the be all and end all of everything, and how you should have this fantastic concept and all of that. I feel after you graduate, you suddenly fall on earth, and then you realize that you're just
True.
you have to understand everything else. Everything is beautiful and everything is important. And I feel the sooner we learn that, and ideally in college, that would be the best.
That's amazing to hear, because in the previous episode when we were talking to Peter Rich, he mentioned that when only 5 or even lesser percentage of buildings around the world are being designed by architects, it's quite arrogant for us to think that we are designers in that sense.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a proponent of hand sketching and drawing. We love looking at his drawings.
Yeah.
You also sort of put emphasis on hand drawings to start with. So your design process starts with hand drawings, and how does it translate into the digital medium?
Oh, nice question. When you think, what is design finally? And what is the practice of architecture? It is this idea, which could be yours, or it could be an assembly of ideas from everybody who's going to be using that building. So that idea has to be represented in some form, so that the others who are building it can grasp it fully. So if you want to represent it, then it has to be guided by something that could be understood by everybody. So the medium is very important, and it's a thought. The thought is what drives that medium. And I feel with hand drawing, especially in the initial part when thinking is so important, it's not just the mechanical act of representing. It's informed by your thought process. And when the thinking is so important, the pace of your drawing has to match the thought process, and that happens when you draw with your hand. When you use AutoCAD, or when you use software, you just say 0.5 to 1.5, and the line just draws itself. And then what? You don't know what to do. Before you can think, it's already drawn. So I feel the pace of thinking and the pace of what comes out on paper has to match. And that happens with hand drawing. But after that, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to romanticize this idea of drawing, because after that, it's, if you want to alter, if you want to move, if you want options, if you want to retain one part but not, and change the others, but not keep redrawing this
replication
part which you want to maintain. It has to be technology. It has to be software. And if you want to reproduce many, and if you want many other constraints to be outlined before you come up with your idea, it's you should know where technology has got to be used and where the idea of thinking has to be.
That's nice. We were talking to Ravindra in the first episode, and he also works with VA extensively, and he says that he spends hours together, 8 to 10 hours, all by himself, like a meditation, and he draws everything out and then gives it to the team. Is that something similar that you do, or you kind of work?
Yes, I do too. I do exactly that, because I have to have my drawing, whatever is in my head will be in the drawing. And after the drawing, there are iterations. I mean, once the team, takes that butter paper and produces all the AutoCAD drawings and revisions and elevations and all of that, I have to keep on referring back to this, because I know that line weight, and I know that sort of a detail which I would have blown up in one corner. So I know what I was thinking only if I see this. Even if I forget later, I have to see the drawing and I will know what was my intent.
Wonderful.
So I'm very much an advocate.
Very nice. I think the present generation of students, of course, they are forced in the academics to work with pencil and hand-drawn drawings, drafting boards in the first few years, and later they take on the softwares. But yeah, I think it's a process that brings
What
about so much
happens with drawing
quality.
is that when you layer your drawings, when you're coming up with options for a floor plan or or a view, you have different line weights. So there are some thinking lines, and then finally you've decided, and so that has a different line weight.
Yes.
So immediately you know that, yeah, this is what I'm kind of okay with. I've almost decided on this. But these other thinking lines are there. In case I want to change it, I can always use this.
Yeah.
All is there in one sort of a
True.
frame. So that's what is a cue that hand drawing has.
Yes, ideation, decision making,
Yes.
iteration, everything is happening almost simultaneously between the
Yeah.
head, heart, and hand. And wonderful.
Yes,
That's
right.
good to know. Contextualism in Indian architecture. You speak about contextualism rooted in Indian culture, heritage, and craft, and you're yourself a big enthusiast and proponent of arts and crafts. So, in contemporary Bangalore, presently in our city at least, I know VA has got projects all over. What does being contextual in Bangalore truly mean, so that our viewers can relate to any of their other cities where they're working?
What does Bangalore have now that it always had, which is still not
It's untouched.
which is still not completely
Disrupted.
disappointing. Can you tell me that one thing? It's the weather.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I feel at least let's enjoy that in the
True.
city. And that's one of the, your buildings could have air conditioning, but there could be many parts of the building that doesn't need to be air conditioning, and that doesn't need to have air conditioners at all. Big common spaces, lobbies, and all of that. It's only where you have all these technology and machines where you need a controlled environment. If it's a lab or a sort of software development office,
Right.
where you need all those technical,
Yeah, precision climate control, so to
yeah.
speak.
So that's where you, if you need to have air conditioning, have it. But you have all these other spaces where you don't need that. We've done these huge facilities for Wipro and research centers there. Where the common spaces, the lobbies, the food courts, all of that, there is no air conditioning. The corridors, they don't have air conditioning. It's only where the computers are kept, that's where there is air conditioning. So use that. I mean, you don't have to be literal when I say that. One has to be very rooted, or it should,
Right.
it stem from the architecture of the place, traditional architecture of the place. You don't have to be so literal, because now the programs have changed. You can't have that same courtyard and same vernacular. You can't have that in cities. There is a huge, sort of the population turnout and the demands of space and time and traffic and all of that. So you cannot have the same, but you know what to keep and what not to keep. So things like that is what I feel. You have to have informed ideas of contextualism.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We will come back to Aparna, and I would like to slightly deviate to Amruth now this time. Amruth is a homegrown Bangalore boy, and he's
Nice
been
to
with
know.
Bangalore. Amruth, she spoke about the one constant in Bangalore, which is the weather, which has not changed much. Of course, the pollution levels probably have gone up. Anything else that you see, Amruth, that has not changed since your childhood till now, and how your upbringing has brought you into this domain of furniture retail? Did you always dream about being an entrepreneur, or it just happened? How was your journey?
I think one constant when it comes to Bangalore, you cannot go beyond weather. It's very very tough to think anything beyond weather. I think the other maybe constant is the Bangalore people, right? At least the old Bangalore, where you go, areas like Malleshwaram, Jayanagar, I just feel
friendly and comfortable.
It's always like, go talk to any shopkeeper, Malleshwaram 8 men. Every time we go to buy the Ganesha during Ganesha festival, it's the same gentleman. He's not changed, and we've been buying from him for quite some time. So that would be like the constant. I think maybe people, and then obviously the weather, Bangalore people. And
Yes.
then
The dosas.
Dosas,
And the
masala
dosas.
dosa, the filter coffee. You can add on.
I think the cultural foundation has remained by and large that. I mean, we still love to have those steaming idlis and dosas, and we still have those people who kind of are very relatable, very friendly,
and what I've seen is, especially when it comes to idli dosas, even people coming into Bangalore adopt to that very, very fast. Like, Uh, it's
People from
instant,
other
just
states.
instant. They fall in love with the masala dosa. They fall in love with your filter coffee,
Yes.
the darshanis.
Yeah, it's the quintessential Indian breakfast now,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes,
Even
that's-
Tamil Nadu doesn't come close to. I might be controversial here, but
Yes,
Karnataka's idlis and
Yeah,
dosas are the best.
And
Yeah.
the sambar is
All
the
right.
debating point.
Yeah.
yes, true. And talk a little about your journey.
So, as you know,
Amruth.
born and brought up in Bangalore.
Yeah.
So, my family's been here for quite some time. And I always wanted to do something on my own. I had no clue it's going to be furniture. As I was like, going through school, I had passion in law. So, I would read tons of Perry Mason books. And I
Oh,
wanted to be a criminal lawyer. So, whether it's luckily or unluckily, I didn't get into endless. And I tried a couple of times, and I was not good enough to do that. But while I was doing that, I was also very good in tech. Basically, when I say technology, like I've been exposed to a computer from a very young age, assembling computers, putting it together. So we started that as a side hustle with another friend of mine, and
okay.
that kicked off really, really good. Keeping in mind in 96, 97, 98, like that tech boom was happening. You had all the Infosys, Wipros, you had the call centers moving here, the medical transcription centers having here, and that as a business it took off really good. The other thing was my brother was in software. I mean, he's from IIT Kharagpur and he was with Infosys. So he said, "You guys are doing anyway hardware. Why don't you do software also?"
Okay.
And so we started off started a software company. I think way back in 98 or 99,
Wow.
which was doing workflow automation software for apparel manufacturing. So
Oh,
we
this I
in
didn't
fact
know.
got a product out, it was called Silk Route because our client was a silk manufacturer, so we called it Silk
Okay.
Route.
Nice name.
And then that went on for a year or two, and then we got into rapid expansion with that. And for us in 2001, it was the breaking point because 2001 you had the big dot-com burst, you had the stock
Yes.
market crash, and our business took a toll on it. We could not afford to pay salaries and stuff like that. And then slowly we had to wind up that business. During that time, my current co-founders, both Pawan and Pankaj, were also related to me. They were getting into furniture, and they said, "Hey, listen, why don't you look into it? I think Bangalore is growing, and we have seen that among all the businesses that we've been in the past, this is probably one of the easiest because there's so much of demand and there's hardly any supply."
Supply.
So that was my
Okay.
entry into furniture, where we started this brand called Looking Good Furniture,
Looking good.
which is
furniture.
again for founded in 2001. We started that and we ran that. It's still there. We have quite a few stores and we're expanding even with that. But so that went on till about 2011, 12. And an interesting story is, Looking Good Furniture was catering to people who are moving into Bangalore for the first time, like a software engineer moving, or like let's say an architect moving, or any of these like a banker moving in, and they would always want something in the budget range. Our tag was affordable luxury, so general budget furniture is what they were buying in. They would come back maybe 5-6 years down the line. The software engineers now become a project manager, and then he says, "I want something better." So we were catering to the same guy, and our service was generally good. We pride on that, and then that went on for a while, and then finally he came in and said, "Listen, you know what? I want something better. You guys don't have it." So that was when the three of us came together and said, "Listen, we need to
Scale up.
evolve fast." And that led to the birth of Dash Square, where again we didn't want to be too expensive, and we wanted to look at a gap in the market at that point of time, which was primarily sofa sets in the vicinity of 1 lakh to 3 lakh rupees, just as a price bracket, because the budget furnitures were ending at about 80,000-90,000 rupees, and the luxury ones were really starting very, very high. So we
Right.
found that gap and we just focused on that, and then we started Dash Square. With that, we also had our associations with international brands like Ashley. We tied up with Natuzzi. We tied up with the Scavoloni Kitchens,
Discover yeah.
Kuka Homes, like multiple international brands where we not only do Dash Square products, but we also do their products. And our latest introduction is the area which we are in right now, which is the Dash Bespoke, which
Right.
which again caters to my same client 23 years back who came buying for a simple sofa set, who now wants something really custom made, something bespoke for his house, and that is where we are now.
Okay, wonderful. You say that you are not building a furniture business, but a scalable retail system in an unorganized category. And you just mentioned that furniture business is easy. I don't know whether you still think it is easy. What does that actually mean when you say scalability and the retail system? instead
Okay.
of a retail
So
chain.
when I say unorganized, I say it's unorganized because I think 80% of furniture that's sold across India happens without an invoice, right? It
Okay.
general cash transaction where, like, you have your regular carpenters, people getting it done. You go to many of the apartments, you'll find whole lot of carpenters doing work out there. There is no real systems that they use to make their wardrobes or their products or any of those things. Same with the sofa sets.
Right.
In Bangalore alone, you'll have 500 factories that manufacture sofa sets, and you
Oh,
can just show
okay.
them any design, they'll make it. I mean, are they keeping a tab in terms of ergonomics? Many of our products are certified by a company called ErgoCert, which says that when you sit on it, at least the ergonomics, is perfect.
Right.
So those small things they're not taking care of. For us, when we started the system, we said, if we want to do anything on scale, we want it to work without us. Across the stores in Bangalore, I'm not there all the time, but we have systems in place where if a person is trained thoroughly, he should be able to operate the way I operate, if not better.
Okay.
So to give you an example, we have like 8 steps of selling, which includes your preparation, how do you greet, like the right path, your different steps which people go through. We focus a lot on the 4DX method. Let's look at a store like Dash. Now, ideally, in a store like this, I'm not going to come and ask a guy how much business you've done. We look at smaller, what we call as wigs, right? The 4DX, the first one is focus, and you focus on your wigs, which is your wildly important goals. So for us, we look at, hey, how much is his close percentage, which means that if he's attending 100 customers, how many customers is he
Closing with.
closing? And what is his average ticket size if he's closing that? So then we focus on those small things, and based on the wigs, you go to the next one where we have something called as lead measures and lag measures. So lead measures as how do I increase his closing percentage? So one obviously would be, better, you need to be trained enough, you need to have product knowledge. So one of his goals would be to improve his product knowledge, right? Are you if Mr. Satish Desai comes and asks you a question, will you be able to answer him confidently in terms of what material is used, all those things? So that goes into the second steps. Same thing with average ticket, are you able to show all the products? Did you demonstrate everything possible? How many demonstrations are you giving? Because furniture is not too much of an online product, right? It needs to be demonstrated, the features and benefits when we're looking at any product needs to be shown to a client. So we have a simple rule that you need to at least show 5 features and 5 benefits of any product. So those are the processes. Third would be are you measuring these goals? Now I can set a goal, but without measurement, like let's say I want to increase my closing percentage, but we say by what and by when. If I'm closing at 10%, okay, I need to go to 15%. By when will you do it? So that gives you a very, very clear-cut measure. And if you go down, there is a scoreboard which shows each of the staff out here their closing percentage. So he gets an idea that I was closing last month at 20%, but now I'm at 18%. That's the third metrics where you measure it. And fourth, last but not least, is what we call as a cadence meeting. Cadence is cadence is nothing but a rhythm. Right now, are you regularly having a meeting with the entire team to ensure that these whatever we had spoken about is discussed? So we have a cadence meeting in the store that happens every Saturday, and across all our stores. So on Saturday they will send us the scorecard of each and every team member, in terms of where they are working. So these are processes, and only with these processes can you scale. You can't say, I'm going to open a store and I'm going to open all these stores, but if they're not following the processes, it doesn't happen.
All right. So there's so much that goes behind we coming to a store, liking a beautiful product and say, I want this, and sit on it, feel it, and then look at the color and say, fine, nice. So what would your advice be to architectural practices who wish to scale up in a similar fashion? Your, again, domain is bridging the gap between craftsmanship, which is sort of a rooted thing in every piece of furniture, to the scalability that you have achieved, 40 stores and your dream number of 100.
Correct. Yeah.
What would your advice to our architectural fraternity be for them to scale their business?
Yeah, but it would, I think it typically boils down to processes. I think if you're process driven, it's fine. But if you're people assume if this entire business had to depend on me or my 2 co-founders, which are Pawan and Pankaj, if it had to depend on us to do everything, us to talk to all customers, you've bought a lot of products from us, but you've never dealt with me.
Yes, I've met you much later.
Yeah, much later. So the idea is that
I met your process first.
Yes. Yeah. So you need to replicate yourself
Right.
and you need to have trust in the person who's handling it. Like, without that trust, it doesn't work. Like, I need to trust my manager here. I need to trust our business head. I need to trust my marketing person to do their job and do it well. And we only step in if we need to step in.
Wonderful.
But if it's driven by me, every small aspect, if I'm micromanaging it, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Like there is a saying in our line which is saying, are you a owner or are you an operator? And if you're an
Right.
operator, you cannot scale. So you
True.
always have to look at everything from the bigger picture.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think in a business, retail business where the steps are systematic and repeatable, that's one context, one paradigm. Now, I would like to segue to Aparna, because she's also a part of a large scale architectural practice. And obviously, architects cannot just replicate themselves. There's a lot of uniqueness that each one brings. How do you bridge the gap between scale and that design depth and craftsmanship that is required for an architect in VA particularly?
Like I said, exactly like what Amrit says, there can't be anything more important than systems and processes. So, and the sooner we learn that right from study about architecture, the better. And I feel that should start right from college,
Right.
where whenever we are given a design problem, we are taught the various stages of how to arrive at the final solution, starting from stating the problem to how you create your brief to how you systematically go about solving the problem. So, same in our firm too, that there is documentation, there is robust systems in place, there are design review meetings, just quite, I mean, you can draw
Yeah, the cadence
parallels.
is what he
Yeah.
mentioned, and
Yeah.
design reviews is what DRMs is what we continuously do
It's
regularly.
very important. We have several teams in our firm which handle a set of projects. The team lead is in total control of right from the design till the final execution of the project. The idea that we set in place is that your design has to be robust, it has to be honest, it has to respond to the program, and there are only certain points, there are some milestones in the project where we intervene as directors. We have this team leads based on the fact that there is a sync between how they work and how they think and what the firm needs to be and what we feel the firm needs to
Wonderful.
produce finally in the end. And so we have to trust that whole process.
Wonderful. So, a lot of learnings in this episode. Our request to viewers is to stay tuned till the end. There's more to go. Now, one of the interesting things that I learned about you, Aparna, is that you have revisited completed projects after a certain duration of time just to observe and see how user behavior and the space and the architecture behaves at that point in time. What was the inspiration to do something like that? And is it to inform your future designs, or you are truly interested in how your building is doing? It's the attachment to that project?
Thanks for asking that, Satish, because my whole worry has always been that don't fall in love with your design. This is what made me take this step, that I should go back and see what I had sort of imagined in my enthusiasm for being creative, or come up with this exotic idea, whether that is really being used with the same whatever intent that I had, whether it's being used like that, or the users have finally morphed it to suit them, and is that a failure from my side? And to assess this, or is it just a function of time that their needs change with time? So it could
True.
be any of this. So to assess this is what I sort of thought that would be a good idea. And somehow I think maybe it has something to do with the fact women tend to do that. This is what I feel. You get something, you get an idea, but you want to actually see how it functions. You just don't fall for the form or what it projects. You actually want to see it functional. And so I have done that for several of my projects and a lot of learnings. I don't know if I must divulge what they are, but if you insist, I could.
Okay. One of the things I have always been sort of curious and intrigued about is the mainstream projects of VA. We know they're all visible and we have seen them. There are certain projects like your Art Village,
Yeah.
which is a very different takeoff, particularly from your desk, your design board.
Yeah.
So, would you like to share with our audience anything that you think brings you apart when it comes to context response or art and craft, that you would like to deviate from what we normally do and then put yourself into a thinking hat which is very different from?
Right. So our firm is, the range is, it's widely vast. I mean, it starts with the a small project like Art Village. Yes, it's and there is also at the other end a huge 50 lakh square feet project also. But to be honest, projects which are small are not viable really for a firm like us to to
Work
do
upon.
about, to work out. But we do some of them because it's pro bono, some works like this, and Art Village was one of those. Therefore, I was able to, I had the freedom to indulge myself a bit in this project. And but that is as far as the firm was concerned. I know the time is important and the resources are important. I cannot use the firm's resources for a project which is entirely pro bono. So I had to be very careful how much time I spent on it, and how much of my staff would be able to work on it. But at the same time, the client was the school which had limited resources, and it was all crowd funded, as they say nowadays.
Right.
It was all money given by the parents under MOUs and all that. And with that, they wanted to build this. And as and when the project would proceed, probably more money would come in. So we knew. So that, like I said earlier, the program, you have to understand that that is also a context. The program itself is a context in this case,
Right.
because the sources are uncertain. The budget is organic.
Okay.
And it's limited also. I mean, you cannot be opulent. You have to be very careful how you use the money. And the land, the terrain was all sorts of contours, and there were a lot of trees. All those physical constraints were there. But the one thing that was good was that the client was totally in sync with how we would think. So that there was a good marriage there. While the philosophy of the school was important for us, because for them it was based on the Krishnamurti's foundation's ideology of how nature is the teacher, and how a holistic education and all the nice stuff that alternative schools think like. So it was important to understand that. And while the school was used to a certain kind of architecture which was looked low cost, which was not just low cost but also looked low cost, and used very basic materials with not great crafting. They didn't have the budget to to detail it or craft it very well. That was bothering me. I was okay with a tight budget, but I didn't want to compromise on finishes and the
Detailing.
finishing. I mean, you could
Finishing.
use basic materials, but the finishing has to be good. You don't have to use marble or some fancy tiles, but with the basic materials, how can you still make it look good? So there was a lot of intense work on detailing, robust detailing, so with basic materials. And the school wanted the building also to be organic, and it should show that it's part of nature, and sort of little more abstract, sort of curvilinear forms and all of that. But I thought differently, and I felt I need to express this to the school. And I told them, yes, nature is important. Nature is by definition organic, and I mean, the forms are abstract, they're not linear. But if you want to value nature, and if you want children to who are studying there to value nature, you need to showcase it. And one way to showcase it is by framing it.
It.
So linear forms, and rectilinear frames and forms, and very finished, where human intervention is discernible. So that is what is important to make nature look good,
The
and
contrast.
vice versa. So, this Japanese principle of wabi-sabi, both are important.
Yeah, both are important.
So I had these debates with the school, and they had an open mind, and it worked. And that's how Art Village. Other thing important was, with the budget constraints, they just wanted, instead of windows and doors, which are expensive for any building, you may know that. I mean, the
Right.
walls are okay; they're not very expensive, but it's the toilets and the windows and doors and all those that are important. The roof that is important. So we decided to have a standard, span, a tile roof with the truss, but the truss would be for a span of 6 meters. So the entire building was only 6 meters span.
Okay.
And so we had that same truss which we replicated. We didn't have to spend on a structural engineer.
Okay.
And we didn't have to spend on creating new sort of and monitoring new trusses
Spans
and spans. So we maintained that. And so the roof was taken care of. The walls were brick and granite, which was locally available brick. We didn't even use wire cut bricks. It were table molded bricks. And the doors and windows I was getting to, which are the most expensive, they just wanted to leave it as openings and put a mesh, this chicken mesh that you get.
Right.
So they thought they would just do that and leave it. But then I was unable to sleep that night, thinking that it doesn't have to look low cost if it is low cost. We are from Jayanagar, you know that. So that was the time when everything, all these beautiful old houses in the first block, second block, Jayanagar, and all were broken down. They were built by KHB, and some really good houses also were broken down for apartments and things like that to come. And they were by roadsides. They used to sell these old doors,
Old frames,
old door frames and window frames. So I immediately, while driving to office, I saw that, and I made this call to the school, and we immediately landed there, bought several of those door frames. The school was open to that idea.
Okay.
And we reused them.
Recycle them.
Yeah,
Okay.
recycle.
Wonderful. So your day typically, how does it move, in the sense that you have to kind of bring yourself to the scale of a master plan and then go back to details, like how you mentioned, now you get into details. How do you navigate between the zooming out, zooming in? Is a typical day flooded with all of this, or you have a specific time where you sit on only details and the macro, micro level thinking that you do?
Like it depends on the life cycle of the project also. When you begin a project, you start at a
The macro,
2,000
20,000,
height
20,000 feet
level.
level.
You're looking at it at a macro level. And as you zoom in, and once the project takes shape, you know the style that you want for a building of that. I mean, whatever the program or the client wants, you know what would be an appropriate style. And based on that, you work out the details. And longevity, maintenance, robustness.
Wonderful.
These are the three principles that I would always keep
Super.
in mind when I get down to the details.
Great.
And when you can do it, when you can sketch it out by hand, then you can zoom in or zoom out without any worry.
So on your projects, do you also get into the nitty-gritties of furniture, the selection of furniture, detailing out?
Selection of furniture, no, I wouldn't say,
Okay.
because we really don't do too many residential interiors.
Right.
Sorry about
Fine.
that.
No problem.
We do
So-
a lot of corporate interiors.
Yes.
Yeah. And interiors are a whole different ball game, and they're completely another whole way of thinking.
Way of thinking, yes.
Yeah, but for many of my projects, earlier we used to do a couple of residences also, and I have done several of those. And those were not really high-end homes, I would say. What is today called high-end, glamorous homes. My homes, the ones which I had done, were a good 10, 15 years ago. And that time, the budget was high for that time. But the tastes were also very, very
Modest.
modest. And also, there was a high level of taste, yes, but a very sort of a, how would I say, very structural sort of aesthetic.
Right.
So there are a lot of wooden furniture where I would do all the detailing of
Okay.
joinery and from starting from the first principles of carpentry. I've done a lot of those. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was relating to what he was sharing, that as people were progressing in their careers and then, probably accumulating more wealth to afford better furniture and
Yeah.
better aesthetics.
Yeah.
And about 2 decades back, it was quite easy for us. The choices were limited, and it was just either this or that or that. And now the choices are so much, and the client expectations are also so much because they're well traveled, well exposed, and then they also
Exactly.
have the leverage of funds to kind of afford.
And that is the culture of Bangalore
Uniqueness.
today. Like you were
Yeah.
talking about culture.
Right.
And I feel that is the culture of Bangalore. It's a cosmopolitan city where people, Bangalore is probably just their first home or their second home. They have several homes everywhere else in some other parts of the world, and they've traveled, and the exposure makes them ambitious, and they want all that here. And that
True.
also makes them confused.
So and switching to Amruth now, because there is so much expectation on choices, and you do have multiple brands, as you mentioned. You have some of the best European brands and Vietnam, all of that.
Mhm.
Now, have you ever faced this challenge of, in spite of having so much, still it's a difficult client expectation we are not able to meet
I think it happens every day.
every day?
Every day, because like you said, like furniture is a big space, really, really big space. There's so many players across, across the world. A lot of international brands in Bangalore, and also people in Bangalore are well traveled.
Right.
You cannot cater to just about everyone. Mainly because of a particular, maybe he wants a particular brand, and you don't have it. It's like a car.
True.
Right? You're buying a car. If a person has made up his mind that he wants to buy a Mercedes, no matter how good the BMW is, he's not going to touch it. So it's similar with furniture, but from our point of view, it's always good to understand, what the objections are. So we have one of the processes where we make a note of why he didn't buy.
Okay.
Obviously, one can be style. Like somebody may not want leather; they may want fabric,
Right.
and we may not have the fabric to suit him. It can be color, it can be architect driven, like where an architect feels that the product may not suit the interiors that
Environment.
I've done. So there are multiple reasons, and this is a part of business, part of life. We just live with it, but we at least try and understand. A simple example would be if we know that there have been at least 8-10 objections in a month where people have wanted a sofa bed, and we don't have one, which we can easily get. So that is something which we can cater to.
Right.
So as long as you know what the objections are, I think you're okay.
Is there something
Okay.
unique to Bangalore?
Unique.
People like in your furniture, the demands, anything unique to what people from Bangalore?
What we are in Hyderabad and a couple of other places. What we find, what unique to Bangalore is the diversity here. It's extremely tough to predict what the person wants compared to like the stores in Coimbatore and all, where it's straightforward. You have this, it will sell. In Bangalore, it's extremely diverse requirements.
Hard to predict the
Yeah.
taste of people.
Yeah, I mean, you see the houses itself.
Right.
They are they're either they're 100% eco-friendly houses made from 100% sustainable material, or you have the ones which have nothing to sustain really. So you have that complete
All right.
diverse customers that you only, I think, get in Bangalore. It's not so much in Hyderabad, not so much anywhere else.
You were mentioning to me that you have similarities with food industry and your industry.
Correct.
Let's see if there are any parallels that we can draw to architecture profession. What are the similarities and dissimilarities that you see between food industry and your furniture industry?
So I mean, when it comes to food and furniture, we have a series which we are doing with Kripala Manna, which is called Furnished with Flavors, where we are
Oh.
trying to compare food and furniture. Like in food, you have so many flavors, and furniture also has many flavors.
True.
And a lot of time, it's the awareness. Typically, if somebody wants to buy a sofa set, he knows X amount is available, but he doesn't know the choices. So I think it's an umpteen amount of flavors that you can get in furniture, which makes it very similar to food. Also, it's also culture driven. Well, you
Right.
have the Japanese style of furniture, you have the Italian style, you have the American style, you have the Chinese style, you obviously have the Indian style. In
Right.
India, you have multiple. You have the wooden furniture that comes out of Mysore,
Yes,
the
yes.
rosewood
Rosewood
products. You have the ones that come from Jodhpur, the sesame wood ones,
Right.
and then you have the ones that come out of Delhi, and then you have the carving sets that comes out of Tamil Nadu. So you have multiple flavors in furniture, and that's the similarity between food and furniture.
Wonderful. Thanks. That's good to know. Aparna, you have this foundation that you founded around arts, particularly performing arts and craft movement. And we were discussing about how you would like children to sort of start respecting their culture and rootedness. So, would you like to elaborate on those aspects and how it influences your work?
Being a South Indian, I lived in the North, but I used to be also quite aware of what happened in the South, but not so much the exposure to what really was our culture. There are so many aspects to being Indian, right? Western culture was such a draw when we grew up. I don't know how it is now, but I'm sure it is now also. And while growing up, it was really cool, to get those pair of Levi's jeans or listen to Woodstock or Beatles and earlier Beatles. But, when we were growing up, all the Pink Floyd and all of that,
Yes.
music was driven like that. And our clothes were that. And it was so cool to order a pizza and, all of that. I mean, that was the aspiration for most of us young people, and it's nice, but at the same time I felt that there was this sort of insidious thing about being apologetic to be Indian or to say anything which was very, very vernacular. I mean, you wouldn't
Right.
speak in the local language. Everybody knew who wrote the lyrics for, who Bob Dylan was, but nobody knows who Tyagaraja is.
Yes.
Nobody knows who Muthuswami Dikshidhar is. No, but they know who Leonard Cohen is and everything. I mean, it was just, there was no equal sort of presence of Indian culture in people's minds. And I feel that unless as children we know about it, only then can we even enjoy it or value it and be proud of it. And I feel that was what was lacking. And a German student or a German child would know who is Mozart, they would know who is Beethoven, but we wouldn't know our own classical musicians. And I felt that there's something deeply wrong here. And we didn't know about our own crafts until the West came and found out that, it was cool to wear block printed clothes or to carry that little mirror work bag or all that. Until that happened, it was not showcased for us ourselves.
Right.
And then, there was this whole movement that started in India, the revival of Indian crafts by Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, and then Pupul Jaikar, and then there was this Dastakar, and it was a progression. Right. So that was when India was showcased back to us. I always felt that had to happen in crafts. It had to, as it had by these very stalwarts of ours, it should also happen in everything, in architecture, it should happen in music, it should happen in everything else. With equal, you like music, you should like both. I mean, you should at least value both kinds of music. And that's how this whole involvement with this organization called Kadambari started. I wasn't the one who founded it, but I was just part of that organization. And I got involved with children and, educating them and working with schools and things like that.
I noticed that many Indian architects are now drawn towards expression of craft, expressing art in their work. Do you see that shift now in Indian architects, that we are moving not only westward in our thinking and architectural expression, and we also value our own Indianness in that sense?
I have a bit of an issue there. I feel it's kind of become polarized. You have this entirely towards the west looking architecture,
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, there is that. And the other hand, you have this total vernacular architecture. So there is two different schools of thought kind of thing.
Okay.
And yeah, you're right. There are some projects in which there is a very beautiful merge of, the positives of both, but not nearly as much as we would like it to be.
Okay.
And I also feel it starts right from our own fraternity's interest. I mean, look at the talks that we go for, look at all the events that we have in Bangalore, in India. When you have an international, you want an international architect to come and talk. Somebody like Daniel Libeskind can come and talk to us about, his kind of architecture, or Zaha Hadid's buildings, or some Shard or Norman Foster's buildings. We are only looking towards the West, and the prize speaker will be somebody who comes from the West. Why we have architects here in India? We have, let alone India, you have architects in Southeast Asia, the Middle East. Why are there no magazines and talks given by architects from extremely talented architects that you find in Vietnam and Cambodia, in Singapore also, and in the West, Middle East, you have certain great architects. Earlier there used to be Hassan Fatih. There were so many great architects over there. Their contexts are relevant, their cultures are relevant to us, and at least their economics. Everything is relevant to us. Why don't we look at these architects? And I feel that's what we need to promote. Look at our own ecosystem and enjoy it, and sort of learn.
That's
from
really
that.
nice. Coming to mentorship, and you believe in demystifying the abstract nature of architectural design for students. Would you like to share more about that? And how you look at mentorship? You're obviously mentoring a big group of people inside of VA and probably outside.
As a student of architecture, and later on when I started working, there was this whole romantic notion in my initial years of studying as well as practice, where this, the idea was the king, and the concept was the king, and you had to really come up with this dreamy idea and things like that. And it was nice. It had its place, and that's what sort of gives you the energy to think and work ahead. But then later on, as years grew and as I shifted firms also, I found out that there is so much more. There is systems, there's processes, there is the pragmatic nature of this profession, which is equally important, if not more. So then I felt that both need to be something that are so valuable, and that needs to be what has to be presented to the students, that in equal weightage. Usually involved in hiring architects for our own firm, I go through so many resumes, and for both interns as well as fresher architects or any other entry level of architects. And I've always noticed that the students have this idea of what some design when you go through their resumes, but when it comes to the actual, when you hire them and they are not able to actually produce a working drawing or draw, or they're not able to, they get frustrated because their ideas are there but they don't know how to represent it. So I felt there was a lack in how they are thinking and what they thought they would be doing and what actually happens in practice. And so I thought it's a good idea to go to teaching.
Okay.
As just to investigate that gap.
Wonderful.
And then I found that the problem, the students are extremely bright. They come with this huge interest in the profession, and but it is this pedagogy, like you would like to call it, where there is, that's what is let me down, is what I feel.
Okay.
And I feel it was very important right from school to not glorify the creative process as something that some people are just born with, but it's a very systematic, structured approach to solving a problem. And that is what is creativity, and that is what needs to be highlighted and taught to students. And let's not mystify this idea that this person is a creative person and talks in this architectural jargon all the time. But it's something very practical and learnable if you just apply yourself in a very systematic way. And there's a process to it. And so I wanted to just give a series of talks on how to demystify this creative process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that's very reassuring for our emerging students. Any mentor that you have had who has had a profound influence on you?
Yeah.
Maybe multiple people you
Yes,
can
yeah,
share.
that's a nice point. First one, of course, was my cousin, like I said, who's an architect. Her name was Revati Kamath. So she was,
Revati Kamath is your cousin.
yeah, that's right.
Wow. That's another revelation.
Yeah, I worked in Chandavakar and Thakur, and that's where I worked with Sanjay Mohe's team, and he was, as you know, he was quite an inspiration, and all this idea of how to think and devices, architectural devices for, creating your ideas into actual buildings. I learned actually the alphabet of creativity, really speaking. Like, what is it that, uh, uh, what makes you happy viscerally when you see a space, how to observe spaces, and then how to create your own vocabulary in architecture. And that was something that I really value. And then after a couple of years of working there, I got married. Life happens as architecture happens. And it was not, I mean, obviously, conflict of interest. I couldn't continue in the firm that I was working in. And after a couple of 2-3 years, I moved to Venkataramanan Associates, and over there, working with PK Venkataramanan, my father-in-law, I was exposed to a whole new method of working and of craftsmanship, of detailing. Space was as important as the zoomed in, version of any building. So RRI, Raman Research Institute, was a building which I really idolized, and I noticed the level of detailing to which PKV went to. Who worked with the contractor, who worked with the mason, who worked with the welder, and he just knew his materials so well. And so I learned that working with him. I learned about how buildings should sustain over time, and how it was important to create this, perfectly crafted structure which would last time. And then my husband Narasimhan, working with him, I just learned systems and processes, and how, I mean, his unique talent is identifying talent. And so he knew how to put together and synthesize people, how to get the right person, and then how to put all their talents together and make it a working team, and how to, get inputs, but at the same time not interfere. So there were little offices within our office. So that's what I learned from him. There's so much that I could understand later. And so I learned not micromanaging from him. So he was one of my mentors, I could say. He'll be very happy to hear that.
On a side note, we will be having another episode with Naresh Narasimhan sometime soon. Yeah, that's just on the cards for us, for our viewers to watch out.
So these were some of my mentors, and the clients themselves were many of my mentors, because I learned what they liked and what they didn't like, and how you have to work around them.
Switching to Amruth, so have you had mentors, particularly in your business or in your life, and you'd like to highlight anyone?
I think there have been obviously quite a few, but let me just get into specifics of working with the brands that we have. For us, we've worked with 3 or 4 big brands which have been great mentors to us. One obviously is Ashley.
Right.
Now, what we realized is, just for the knowledge of the viewers, like Ashley is the world's biggest furniture manufacturer.
Wow,
There's nobody
I didn't know.
who manufactures more furniture apart from them, and they do it at scale.
Right.
So they've been great, because a lot of the processes which they use in their stores is what we've brought in out here. They have sent trainers to India to train our staff for sales, for like your visual merchandising, for warehouse management, multiple of that aspects, right? So we have a concept in Ashley called pigs and cows, where we need to identify every product, whether it's a pig or a cow. So these were things which were unheard of, for us. So those are the things that we've brought it from them. obviously there have been other brands like Nathuzi, like Kuka, and we've looked at different styles. Obviously there is a misconception sometimes about brands from China, but what we can definitely learn from them is the way they scale. Like the brand that we work with, probably I think in the year 2022 they opened 3,000 stores in China, one brand, and that kind of scale, it's unimaginable now, but that's what future of India holds. Like maybe 20 years down the line. So primarily, I think in mentorship, the two co-founders of mine have been great mentors because we bring in different aspects of the business. Pawan is he's extremely system driven. Pankaj is very instinctive in the way he operates. So for me, I try and pick up the best of both their qualities. So
and what would your trait be that you bring to the business?
I think balance.
Yeah. Networking.
Networking, balance. Yeah, I mean, I'm both ways, right? I like to at times take instinctive decisions, and at times I'm like super process driven. I need to win. So that's what my two co-founders bring to me. They give me that balance because they both are the two extremes.
I'm so enriched by this episode. We're talking about craftsmanship, detailing, handwork, culture, art, scalability, processes. You mentioned D4X or whatever. And it's a rich episode in that sense.
4 dimensions of execution.
Sorry, 4DX, 4 dimensions of execution. So Aparna, VA, Venkataramanan Associates, is one of the few large firms in India which has grown from its origins. And it's a large team, and you obviously have the organizational effort in putting the team integral, managing the workflows, the discipline, ethos, culture, productivity of the team. So what are some of the learnings that you can share with our viewers who are aspiring to build larger firms?
As a firm that has been in Bangalore since 1969, that's 56 years, and which has grown along with how our country's economy has grown, so has the firm grown. It's like a parallel course. The one thing, think of it as Wi-Fi, It's invisible. That's how you have to be as a management, one of the managers of the firm, managing directors of the firm. One needs to be invisible, but at the same time, it's the most powerful thing, and it has control over everything, but not a very visible control. So it has to be, it's essential, it's powerful, but yet it has to be invisible. So that you give some, you take some. You have to give everybody that freedom, but at the same time, there has to be systematic reviews and understanding the whole. There has to be a guiding principle. There has to be this password which everybody needs to know.
Wonderful. I think for me, this is a very profound takeaway from both of you. I think the powerful takeaway of this session for me personally is when you look at scale, being an invisible control, and like how Amruth mentioned, being able to replicate yourself in your people and operate without your presence. So I think these are two powerful takeaways for me particularly, and a very convenient one too. So yeah, with that,
I still have a lot to learn, but mostly it is Naresh who has to face this.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions to pick his brain later in the next episodes. One next episode whenever it happens. Now I have a couple of questions more for you, Amruth. You're obsessed with this execution frameworks, KPIs and all that. Why do most retail businesses, and we have seen many retail businesses in Bangalore, we also deal with them sometimes as customers. Why do you think retail businesses succeed or fail? And if your scale is to go from 40 to 100, how would that journey be? How does it seem to you at this moment in time? Does it scare you or does it excite you?
Well, it excites me. It doesn't scare me at all. Obviously, the biggest challenge for any business is cash flow. Right? Cash flow is is the king. You can go on scaling, but at the end of the day, like, you know, how you manage cash flow is the, I think, key to any business. It's not about being profitable. It's not about any of those things, because a lot of times people talk about profits or without having any cash flow. So you got to, number one, keep a track of your cash flow and see you have enough cash flow to sustain the business. But having said that, when it comes to any kind of expansion, it depends on, there are 8 P's of retail, multiple P's, but the 2 most important P's, at least for me, are one is people, the other is process. As long as you have the right people and the right processes, you can scale. A product is another P of retail, but we've never seen any store, like whenever a business dips in any of the branch, it's highly unlikely that it's because of the product. It's technically the people or the processes that have failed, where the people is not following the process, or there's something that's totally gone wrong. So I think as long as people and processes there, there is no limitations for anybody to scale, any retail to scale, as long as you have cash flow.
Wonderful. That holds true, I think, to architecture also. It's all about people and process.
Yeah.
Of course, there is that product which is our innate
Correct.
design capability.
And cash flow.
Cash flow.
Yeah, cash flow. Cash flow for architects, for sure. Yes.
I think for everyone, any business, you need cash flow. I've seen like really good businesses where I think they're making a lot of profit. I have taken a toss mainly because they have not kept a track of their cash flow.
True.
I've had talks to entrepreneurs where, you know, they've purchased far more that they can
Hold.
they can sell, and you know, at the store level they're really profitable, but then they have these high like a lot of inventory which they cannot sell,
Liability.
just kill their cash flow. So
Okay. So Amruth, you have said that people are a critical component in business, and scale only matters if people grow, is what you mentioned to me. So how do you see that influencing maybe hundreds of families when Dash Square goes into 100 outlets?
Yeah. See, our goal is that just to give you a little bit of history of our company. I mean, obviously Dash Square is the first generation company, but when it comes to my co-founders, they were in the retail business for a long time. They used to run a retail garment store in Commercial Street called Looking Good and Little Shoppy. There's a children's store called Little Shoppy. So they've been there for a really, really long time. And when they wounded up the garment business is when they got into furniture. And that's when I joined them. We have team members right now working with us who were working 40 years back in Little Shoppy, still working.
Wow.
So for us, I think people is extremely, extremely important. Our growth won't be complete if they don't grow along with us. So when I say that, one of the initiatives that we are trying is, obviously the first thing was we were in LLP, we've gotten into a private limited. And we probably want to be one of the first furniture companies that has an ESOP option for all our employees. So if at any point of time, we go public, like many of the furniture companies are going, they should benefit from the net outcome of Dash growing big.
Wonderful. Okay, now for the next surprise round is quick rapid fire. Aparna, we'll start with you. What would your primary choice of material be? Pencil, pen, or digital stylus?
Different for different things, but pencil.
Pencil. One architectural element you think is overrated?
Cove lighting.
That's interesting point. Yes, I like that. Yeah.
I looked upward to see this.
Cove lighting. A building that still humbles you.
Raman Research Institute library.
Wonderful. Yeah, you mentioned about that during your conversation. Minimalism or layered richness?
Layered richness, but architecturally, not expensive kind of richness.
Wonderful. If you weren't an architect, if architecture was not your choice, what would your next choice be?
Either a master cutter tailor or an artist.
Okay, I guess that. So, switching to you, Amruth, what would your tactile dream material be? Fabric, leather?
I think it's a mix of both.
Okay.
It can't be one. Like I think leather is obviously for for life, and fabric just to add that sparkle.
But if it was for yourself?
I would do both. I have both at my place.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a leather sofa.
Yeah, feel free to.
Leather sofa
feel
with
free to-
fabric pillows.
Feel free to
That,
Yeah.
question his sofa first or lighting first.
A sofa first.
Okay, definitely not cove lighting.
So I feel, like one of the common mistakes which people make is that they use the furniture the max, but that sometimes selected the last. Right?
True.
And
That's very
when you come out here, you've already done your interiors in a particular manner that you really cannot. You don't have your you
Options,
cannot sit
yeah.
on your dream sofa or something with a lot of comfort. So.
Yeah, we architects love to talk about the intangibles in that sense. Most misunderstood word in luxury furniture.
Imported.
Important. That's a good one. That's a really good one. One furniture trend you hope fades away.
Over minimalism,
Home minimalism.
Like I've seen really beautiful houses, but then they want to. There's hardly anything in it, and I'm like, why do you really need to make a house? Minimalism is. I like minimalism, but over minimalism,
Over
I feel
minimalism. Extreme
should go
minimalism.
away.
Sleeping on the floor types.
I agree.
Something like that.
If furniture could talk, what would it complain about?
Don't choose me for the color.
Wonderful. That's very, it's a very, very obvious. Nice.
I think comfort comes first. Comfort. It needs to be comfortable.
So Aparna, thank you, and Amruth, thank you so much. For me personally, this was a very rich and informative session, and I trust that our viewers will also find the same. Very, very worth investing their time upon. So on a closing note, sincere gratitude from IIID Bangalore Regional Chapter. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you, Aparna.
Yes. So thank you for your time. If you have stayed tuned till this long, I'm sure you would have had a lot of value to derive from this session. We reaffirm our commitment to bringing you more episodes of same richness. So stay tuned. Click that bell icon so that you get notified each time we upload an episode. We do that once every month. Keep yourself subscribed so that we know who our audience is. Please do contribute by sharing your comments, thoughts, ideas, opinions, criticism, so that we can make these sessions more engaging, rewarding for each and every one of you. Thank you once again to our guests, and thanks to IIID to make this happen. Until we meet next time, stay curious, keep questioning, and keep transforming the world around you the way you always do. Thank you so much. See you soon.